Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday, or not
Yes,
quite Friday?
Happy Friday-ish. In transparency, this is a little bit of a pre-record, 48 hours before we go out, but we wouldn't miss it for the world, would we?
No, we always want to do it.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we're looking at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we're going to pull together some themes that we've been covering over the last sort of 6 months and give you our perspective on what they might mean for more transformational change in the London market going forward. But first, as always, let's start with the news. So I saw this, Ben. You probably won't be able to see it, but I saw it on LinkedIn. Jeremy Keating put this up, and it is the FCA figures on the in-force policy count for the whole of the UK market. And if
you live an interesting life.
I love this one. I love a stat. I love a before and after, a 2021, 2022. I thought this was quite interesting. This is obviously GI kind of retail insurance here. So we're looking at travel, pet, motor, and home mainly in there. Some protection stuff. What's interesting is the percentage change there. So you've got at the top 147% change in the positive for travel insurance for European cover, and also for standalone trips. That's gone up massively, and personal accident standalone as well. So that's pretty explainable in the sense that we've had COVID, people are now traveling again, and so wanting those insurance products. On the flip side, what's interesting is the stuff that has gone down. So if you look, motorcycle and personal accident add-ons and personal protection add-ons and things like what's the other one that I saw in there? Oh yeah, gadget insurance add-ons. These have all gone down quite a lot, and that's probably my reading of that is kind of people being able to cut back as the economic environment starts to kick in and those high interest rates start to hit people's pockets. They're probably pulling back on those optional extras when they're renewing the product. So that's it's quite a big deal for those players in.
Well, and I think they're probably in some ways they are when you get to add-ons, they are the fringier areas of often of businesses, aren't they? Sometimes the areas, I'm not saying that is true of all of them, but sometimes the areas where you get a bit of mis-selling, affinity stuff, people maybe just getting wise to it. But again, I think it's a bit like, you're probably right, it's akin to people stopping subscriptions, isn't it? In good times, they don't bother, just leave them run. Yeah. But as it gets a bit tighter, they start to shut it all down a little bit. Yeah. It's a nice, it's kind of a picture profile from those stats of how the world is, isn't it, in some ways?
Yeah. It's quite interesting you see lots of metrics on the news, but none of those really.
It'd be good to get some business stuff like that, wouldn't it, as well? To some commercial lines stuff. Yeah,
I'll drop him a line on LinkedIn and see if he does anything like that.
That would be good.
Be good. Okay. So I also saw this, Ben, and I thought I'd share it. So a couple of weeks ago on the last show, we put up a story from the FT. That was Lloyd's, put out a story about how cyber is potentially a systemic risk, and that insurers should be careful. And we actually questioned the stories, like, what's the point of putting this out? And maybe 10 days later, this might be it, because an FCA Dear CEO warning letter came out around cyber. And this interesting article that I saw in the Insurance Business kind of dissected it a bit, mainly picking up on, within the letter, the mismatch between insured's expectations and policy outcomes, which is obviously where the FCA are focused. And interestingly, on the second paragraph, wanting to make sure that boards had a clear understanding of how these policies were being sold, what they were being covered, and putting it in squarely in that kind of CEO spotlight, which is interesting. It then goes on. This is really an interview with Matthew Waller from Corvus, and he's then talking about the challenges. And I think this is interesting because we talk about cyber quite a bit, and it kind of this really just sums up the kind of the dilemma where you've got a rapidly changing kind of risk environment with cyber. The threats are constantly evolving that we've talked about before as the news of new ones comes through. So you need to have these policies that can adapt. But on the other hand, you need to have consistency so that the people that are buying them understand what's going to be covered, and they're not just buying policies thinking they're going to do something and something else. So and then the final thing that I took away from this particular article was the role of technology, which I think we're going to touch a little bit more on technology and how it's driving change. I think this is a positive for technology and insurance. I think it will provide the opportunity to perhaps build models that are more adaptive and perhaps faster to react. Because as we've talked about before with cyber, it's often not the check that you're looking for. It's the support and the help, and perhaps more of the preemptive stuff that you're looking at, more of a service, I suppose, in those insurance policies rather than just a payout at the end of it. So, interesting article there.
Yeah, I think, the difficulty is partly these don't pay out the full amount anyway. They are about what you've just described, which is the help and advice, and sometimes, and increasingly, I think the focus on the mitigation of those risks prior to them actually happening, which I think is a big issue. But I imagine, I think even lots of people in the industry that we would talk to would say, the cyber wordings are, not clear. They're often an add-on to a policy, sometimes a property policy. I just could see that most businesses don't really understand those, or it's hard to understand them. I think certainly talking to people when I've been out in the regions in the last few weeks, I think they are saying it's quite tough to sell this policy to businesses as well, because they just don't understand it. So it cuts both ways, really, which is, there is definitely cyber issues and hacks and everything else, but do people understand the product well enough, and are they bothered enough to say, and do they believe, in fact, that an insurance product will actually cover them? Yeah. So it's difficult at both ends with cyber, because some people in insurance will say this is a systemic risk. It's not an insurable risk, and others, Beasley, maybe others will say no, you should have a can-do mentality and write it. It should all be coverable. So it's a tricky world, cyber, I think, in terms of insurance. And I suppose what everybody's waiting for is a big hack and a big claim, and what happens at that point.
Yeah. Interesting. So that will be a developing story. I'm sure we'll be keeping across. Right, Ben, you wanted to talk a little bit about hybrid. With this story in the Insurance Journal.
Yeah, so this is one of our perennial, I suppose, topics now, which is the hybrid working, flexible working. Which way is it going? I think you've called it previously, and we don't know whether you're right or you're wrong. But so Insurance Journal's published what actually is data from Hayes, the recruitment business, and saying that hybrid working has gone up. Sorry, it's sort of from 43%, has dropped from 43% to 39%. In other words, more people are going into the office now than previously were last year. So it's not a massive change, but it is shifting towards that. So now they're calling that more people are now going into the office than are not on a regular basis or full time. And interestingly, they say that actually when the issue, there's still a lot of hybrid working. So when the issue is forced by companies, 70% of those people who are asked to come in don't come in. So they effectively say no to that. So it does seem to indicate that a more flexible, collaborative approach is required by businesses because people will just not respond to orders. The other that was a Boston Consulting stat actually. At the moment, interesting as well, London is the highest market in terms, or the largest in terms of hybrid or flexible working. It has the most flexible working, but equally it also has it's the least likely to be fully remote. So what those data are saying is that London has perhaps reached a kind of more of a happy medium between on-flexible or hybrid working than other parts of the country. Because, people are going in on this thing that we called before, which is this sort of platform days or foundation days or anchor days, whatever they're called, 3 days a week or whatever, that people go in and then they work there. I think my sense is that you look at lots of these data sources, they're all traveling in the same direction, which is towards a flexible week of probably 3 days in the office. And, I don't think it's just London because it's London. I think it's a very big market. And I suppose you have to sort things out more in London more quickly than elsewhere.
And this is the slide that kind of backs that up.
It does. And it's to do obviously with commuting, and the challenge, I think, as we know, that's one of the big issues for a lot of people, is that, they don't see any reason when commuting is quite hassly and wastes time. I think people feel it's legitimate to say, look, I can be more efficient by having a couple of days working at home than I can being in every day. Perhaps that's what is being said in London more than, perhaps other parts of the country. I mean, I'm not saying that commuting isn't hassly in the Northwest, having just kind of been up there and seeing what trains are like and traffic. No, but I think London does have a particular issue where people do come in from quite a long way away often as well. So, that is interesting. But it's moving, isn't it? I mean, that's the other thing. It's changing and moving, but it's not moving towards fully back in the office.
No. I don't think any of us said that this time last year. I think my prediction this time last year was that more people would be back in the office than not. Anyway, we'll wait and see.
So you're thinking you're right. That's what you're hoping.
I'm just saying.
I think we need more validation. Yeah,
I agree. That's what I was going to say as well. Because there'll be some more figures out next week that say the reverse.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to look for them.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. All right. Let us talk a little bit now about kind of our main topic of discussion. So we've been kind of noting in the news a number of kind of there might be markers or signposts that might be suggesting that we're on a tipping point. It might have reached the tipping point, over the tipping point of some transformational change in the London market. And I'm just going to start this off by saying I've been talking about technology change and operations and what I've been seeing over the past 18 months, 2 years, where the different technologies that we've seen emerge over the last 7 to 10 years around data, around analytics, around the Internet of Things, they've all taken place in isolation. And now with the development of AI and advanced analytics over the last 12 to 18 months, you can now see a route where you can bring these technologies together and they converge to make something that is much more powerful than those individual pieces of technology were before. And I think that's driving real change in the conversation at this stage in insurance, and you see it at our conferences. We saw it at London Market Claims earlier in October, that the conversation and the enthusiasm to embrace the opportunity to find what new ways of working, enhance the customer experience, putting claims at the forefront by using these new technologies as part of a wider kind of change is really tangible, and nothing that we've seen over the last 10 years of running that conference. It was markedly different, I would say, those conversations. And then if we bring it in to some of the stuff that we've been talking about over the last few weeks, so we've been talking about some big moves. So Rob Powell going to Willis, was it? From Marsh, and we talked about the Howden rebrand, bringing all the brands under one recognizable umbrella. Then also with Howden, kind of this new kind of startup within insurance. It's kind of these are a signpost that they're embracing what we've seen at the conferences and that change in the conversation, and they're coming through in actions. And I think, Ben, you're going to kind of pick it up at this point and talk about perhaps.
Yeah. So I'd put it more fundamentally than embracing. I think what's gone on is my hypothesis, and I have been saying a bit of this from the data that we look at as well. And so if you take, just going very quickly back to pre-pandemic, in our data, we would talk a lot about consolidation and competition, two C words, basically saying that the market is changing, business flows are going to different places because of the utility of those places, whether that be big insurers or specialists or whatever. So movement of business and flows of business across a big distribution chain like insurance is really, really important, because it shows that something is going on, and you better position yourself carefully if that is starting to happen, because you'll miss the boat or you'll get caught out. So that was already happening. Obviously, pandemic, knocked that quite badly, and there was a lot of I suppose historical kind of legacy business that was causing lots and lots of pain and problems for big insurers, including AXA XL and others who have pulled out of various markets and remediated. So big insurers, many of them did do that, and that sort of stalled the market for a couple of probably for 2 to almost 3 years really. In that it just sort of made a bit of a what I'd call a kind of imbalance in the market where rate was going up and big players weren't necessarily taking advantage of that because they were busy remediating business, pulling out of lines. So all of that has been going on. And we've now got to a kind of what I'd call a more normalized position in which big players are now going for it. Specialists are still going for it. And we're seeing we are starting to see more consolidation. And, there's broker businesses. There's RSA is buying NIG out in the regions in the UK. So if you look across the piece, you can see that the acquisitions is beginning to pick up again. So those are all signs and signals of things happening. So really what I think has happened is through that period, obviously this has all gone on. Businesses have been thinking a lot. Boards and executive groups have been saying, what the hell do we do? Where do we go? What's next? We've cleaned up the books a bit. We need to go forward. Rates up. How long have we got? Maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years, maybe less to get in on this. Huge amount of competition, brokers pushing towards customer focus and competing themselves and all that. So everywhere you look, there is change happening and a pace of change and strategizing, basically, which is what I'd call it. So everybody's trying to work out what's going on, where are we, what do we do, what can we do to take advantage or make the most of the competitive situation. And I actually have to say that if you look at an organization and they're not doing that, you really have to question what are they doing, because I'm absolutely certain they'll get caught out if they think they can just carry on as they were. So your point and your point about technology is well made on that. So the couple of signs that we're seeing now, because what strategy does, of course, you do strategy, that takes a lot of intellectual input and work and planning and arguments internally. You decide on your strategy and then you have to execute, and execution is everything. So where are we seeing signs? So what we're starting to see is signs of execution, I think. So Liberty Mutual this week was one that caught my eye. Slashes 850 jobs, part of a transformation initiative. Well, the key words there are transformation initiative. That is a thought through plan, strategy for the business. They're really working out what they do. Already, though, they're starting to execute. So they're beyond just the talking about this or writing it down in a lovely paper internally. This is now, we're really going to do something about this. We're taking out 850 jobs. It's not only Liberty, Geico lay off 2,000, 6% of the workforce in the US. Farmers laying off 2,400. Yes, some of this is because of the pressures that businesses are under because of cat losses and other motor markets and other things. But not all of it. A lot of it is to do with looking ahead and saying, what do we need to do? And so when you talk about, if you look at the Liberty article, they say we will reimagine our business with a focus on efficiency and effectiveness, providing more value for our customers, brokers and partners. And so really what they're saying, I think, in that is that we are looking now to a plan that will deliver value ultimately and beat the competition. And that's, pretty much what most businesses would ultimately say. So they've got some losses, and they're not, that's putting them under pressure as well. They've got to act. But, the market should, to some extent, be in their favor. It's quite hard. So, it depends on where you look, of course. But broadly speaking, these things are starting to happen. So, we're starting to see the signs of execution. I think you're seeing it from the technology perspective, but I think it's also now starting to come out in the people. And once you start to fire people or reduce workforces or even increase workforces, but particularly that has to be part of a thought through plan. You can't just do it on a whim. Yeah. Or you're really starting to go, right, okay, this business is going to be different from here on in.
Yeah. We also see it at Aon as well, a slightly different kind of approach than Liberty or Howden with their 3x3 strategy.
So I could have taken. I mean, I looked at Aon and the Insurance Insider, Adam McNastry, has done a very good piece on the Aon 3x3 strategy, in which he's, as he always does very well, analysed a lot of the financial implications of it and what the business is trying to achieve. And I won't go into lots and lots of detail about it, but the two examples I've chosen are Howden and Aon. So Aon is obviously a big behemoth of a business. It is massive, and it has tried to do a merger with WTW, which failed. So it is left with having to think through a strategy. So it's actually got the word strategy there, just to prove a point. And what they're trying to do is these three things, really: leverage new simplified solutions, in structure of risk capital and human capital. So solutions also means fees, consulting, really. Embed enterprise clients across the organization. Well, this really means pulling the organization together to serve clients and cross-sell effectively with one account executive. So this is a matrixed operation, trying to make the most of its business contacts and its clients. And it really indicates it had worked in silos, that they've had the previous attempts at Aon, which was called Aon United, which was trying to bring the business together to get rid of the silos, because it realizes that to leverage a business the size of Aon, you need to have it as a matrixed operation, really, with single points of contact for clients, so they can buy lots and lots of stuff from you, and that increases your number of products you're selling, and it also increases your profitability potentially, which is what they are looking at. So they're looking at going from to a sort of operating return of up to 40% as a business, which is pretty good, right? Where's that all going to come from? Well, that's going to come from this. Some of it's going to come from this business services, integrated platforms, innovate at scale. They've got 15,000 people in this operation, business services, and Aon therefore wants to leverage, your point about technology, but also data, platforms, products, innovation. So they're really saying that's the engine, if you like, of the business in terms of producing new things, and they're calling it innovating at scale. And that's a really interesting kind of phrase. So they're pretty much turning themselves almost away from being a broker, you might argue, into more of a consulting type of feel as an operation. It feels more PwC, Deloitte's than Aon to me in terms of the language and the approach. And that's because their bet is that the world is becoming more risky and complex. And they're probably right. Okay. I mean, we've talked cyber, we've talked, we could talk war, we could talk all the things that are going on in the world. But that is an issue for them. The other thing now, so the questions really for an Aon are really, having failed in one big merger, they've now got to think about how do they grow organically, and that's probably why their share price is being hit. And that tends to be, I think that was the view of McNestry really, is that they've got fairly low organic growth. So they've got two things going on. Organic, they've got to raise the organic growth thing, which they're doing through innovation and customer focus matrix operation, and they're trying to, and they'll also go for acquisitions, I think. And Insider is recommending they go for buying retail mid-market businesses, particularly in the US. So that's the behemoth strategy, which is sort a lot out internally, leverage our strengths, matrix the operation, get rid of silos, and really sell many more products in the future and increase the profitability, and buy some businesses along the way. Yeah.
Cool.
So then the next one's Howden, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Elliot Richardson, who's CEO of Howden Tiger, or vice chairman of Howden Tiger. And this is a really interesting interview to listen to. This is a man on a mission, without doubt, and he is also part of a business that's on a mission. He talks about lots of interesting things, I think, that don't necessarily seem relevant in some ways, but they are, which is that we're a good team, we're all good friends, we all sit around and talk about this. So he's talking about strategizing. He's talking about people that get on, see the same vision, have the same ambition, work the same way in the same culture, and we all want to succeed. And we realize the moment is now. And he talks a lot about that in this interview. The moment is now. And if you're not up for it, sling your hook and get out of Howden, because you're not part of what we're trying to achieve. That's really what he says. So his mission and his message is absolutely about the same thing as Aon, but from a different perspective. Is that we've got the agility, the flexibility, we've got an amazing talent program, because that's key to this, identifying the right people, and we will hire them, and we've got a Moneyball approach to hiring people, talent. Aon, by contrast, is saying we've got the talent in the business already, we just need to make sure they're organized and pointed in the right direction. Howden is saying we're going to win through sheer dynamism and pace and talent. And the contrast is really, really different. I mean, they're two very different approaches, but they're basically saying the same thing, which is the time is now, we've got to do it now, and we're going to drive this. So these are, obviously, I could have probably chosen Marsh, it just wasn't as public. I could have probably chosen other businesses, but these two businesses from different directions are going to drive into a market that they both believe has got huge potential. So Richardson is saying that there could be explosive growth in FAC, in other business, or there has been already in FAC, but in other areas, particularly in Europe, in terms of insurance. So they see that there are massive, massive opportunities for growth now in the business. So they're really just examples. I'm sure we could, as I said, we could have chosen many, many more of strategy in action. You listen to the people, you realize that, wow, there's a lot going on. And so to my point of, if you're standing still, forget it, you're going to lose, I think.
Yeah.
It's you snooze, you lose moment in this market.
I think you're absolutely right. We were talking earlier this week that I'm about to launch Tintec London Market, and you look at the themes that are down there that we're going to cover next February, and they have moved away from that very technical kind of operations, much more into, wow, what is the art of the possible? What is the strategic landscape going to look like? How are these technologies going to impact the risk landscape, but also our ability to play into and lean into those markets? So, it's really exciting. I mean, really
it is, and I should just say that I think that this is a good point to explain why brand is so important in all of this, and why Howden make those changes, and why Aon talks about Aon United. Brand is about everything that you do, and it's about your position in the market and your proposition. So it isn't just about selling stuff on the street, right? It's partly about that, It's really about saying, this is what we stand for, this is what we're about, and this is where we're going. So to do that, both of these businesses have an Aon are saying we have to be consistent right across the piece. We have to have people who are all pointed in the right direction, because otherwise we can't compete, because we'll just be we won't be more than the sum of the parts. And I think that's really where this idea of which we talk about a lot, which is the idea of the brand proposition being more long term, is you've got to keep on building this, because people have got to get it at some point. And they can't just get it from sales activity, which is what the insurance industry has traditionally done. They've just traded stuff and then moved in and out of markets. But now it's so important to have this, what do we stand for, brand out there.
Great. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. We will we'll continue those themes, looking for those signposts and trying to give our take on what it means for the industry and where we might be going in the medium to long term, because as we always say, nobody knows the future.
No.
Good. Right. Let's move it on to more safe ground. Ben, let's talk about service and your experience with a tunnel and a bridge.
Yeah.
125.
So we do talk a lot, and I talk a lot about service, and we just this week, which we're not going to show today, we'll probably show next week, we've got a lot of press around service in the insurance industry and how bad we are and mea culpa and everything else. And of course we would tend to agree with that, but we always do caveat it by saying it's not absolutely awful. It's just not, it's just off the pace quite often, and it's slow and it's frustrating, as opposed to the Dartford tunnel crossing, which I have had the sad experience and devastating experience over the last few weeks of dealing with, which is to simply pass through a tunnel with a supposed piece of technology that just tracks you, and then you sign up and it automatically gets you to pay the fee. I've been hounded by this organization daily with text saying, you will be paying a fine if you do not do this. So what they've done is they've switched to an automated system. You used to pay through toll booths, if you remember. Good old-fashioned toll booths. Put the card in, you go through, and the thing goes up, and you know you've paid, right? This thing now is invisible and all that. Now, of course, there are these systems, and they've been in place for a long time. But oh my God, has this gone wrong? This is just ridiculous. And I've never had anything, and I think a lot of people agree with me on this, as we'll see in a minute, that is actually stressful and anxiety inducing, because to get emails every day. Now, I don't look, to be honest, I don't care. A 30 quid fine or 40 quid fine doesn't matter massively to me, but it is when it's coming every day and they're saying this, you suddenly have this concept, and it's interesting in the context of AI, that the whole thing has gone wrong completely. And I could just be getting thousands of requests to pay and to be fined, and kind of scrubbed off the face of the earth because I didn't pay a £2.50 fee to the Dart charge system. But the only saving grace on this is people again. So I went onto Trustpilot to have a look at what was going on, and I have never seen such a bad score for any business. It is, you can see 92% give this 1 star, and I can tell you, reading the comments, many of them. One here says it deserves 0 stars. They wanted to give it 0, not 1, but the system doesn't allow that. A couple of 5 stars, and I think one of those was actually just for the fact that the poor beleaguered person in the call center was nice to them. But this has gone spectacularly wrong, and is a warning really around the introduction of technology, and where a whole system, the people bit, the technology, the way it communicates with you has gone wrong in every single respect. I've sent in a complaint. No doubt it'll take months, maybe years to even get that through. But fundamentally, it is a bit of a problem because people still have to go through the Dartford tunnel.
Yeah.
And so this isn't like a choice thing. This is, no, I need to travel around there on the M25 and go through. There's not many other ways you can go around that thing. So it's a major, I think it's a major issue, but it's just an example, I think, of how bad it can get.
Yeah. Shocking service.
I mean, this picks up all the key points that we talk about when this goes wrong. So this is what happened to me. Revalidated my account, payment could not be taken. I've had this, tried to pay manually. I did that as well. So I tried to bypass the system by just giving them money. but that was refused. Same thing happened to me. What system won't take money from you when it's asking you for money? That is the, you're in the space odyssey.
Yeah.
You're kind of in that terrible 2001 scenario with Hal at that moment. But yeah,
the money.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. I'm afraid your card was not accepted, Ben.
Yeah.
No, your card has not been accepted, Ben. I'm sorry. They're fine. But it is that. It is exactly that. It is that was the premonition, and that is exactly what's happening with this sort of thing. So we are going to see more of this, I can guarantee you, because ultimately people put these systems in and they fail, right?
Yeah,
and
indeed.
The interesting thing now with this one will be how long will it take them to get this fixed? This has been going on for 3 or 4 months, and I think it's going to hit the news soon.
Yeah,
well, it has.
definitely.
It's on our show.
That's it. They'll get it sorted now, without a doubt. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left, Ben. We talked last week before, about your experience of, again, being in a car, but this time in the best car park voted for.
The best car park in the UK, won UK Car Park of the Year award 2022. Yeah. And
let's have a look at this.
B4 car park.
B4.
Right, so we've had a look around. We said we're going to get one a week or something. So this is the one I've chosen. It's the Butcher's Shop of the Year awards. I mean, I'm a meat eater. I'm a carnivore. I like a bit of meat, but it's caught my attention. Butcher's Shop of the Year awards. Just to show that insurance might have a lot of awards, but Butcher's Shop of the Year awards also has a lot. They've got all sorts of different regional awards, Team of the Year awards, everything you could imagine around butchers' shops. And you can see here, you could go to the event. I don't think I'll be going, but you can showcase your butcher's shop, promote, reward, read, network, do all the sort of things you can do in insurance, but with butcher shops. So they're not different.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
And they're all about people, right? So you can see these people who are butchers. And of course, the interesting thing for me is, do they look like butchers?
They're certainly wearing a butcher's outfit.
Well, that lot at the top left there do look like butchers, but then some of the people you see, they don't. They look like sort of, you're kind of young. There could be a young insurance professional. Yeah,
in an insurtech kind of groovy guy.
Or they're working in a butcher's. They're working in a butcher's, a successful butcher's shop, presumably.
A lot of money in meat. There you go.
But they are Butcher Shop of the Year awards. I mean, that's not going to be, that's not surprising as Car Park of the Year awards. But it's just, we're going to go through the diversity of different types of awards and see if we can learn anything. Yeah,
I actually got a story. Remind me, Ben, of award that actually got done by the advertising standards office. I'll fish that out and I'll bring it up because it's quite interesting. Because some of these awards are not as they might seem.
No, well, that's what they are murky. Some of them, aren't they? Yes,
they are murky.
We've got to look. I don't think I would not say that about the Butcher's Shop awards. They look absolutely up front. They do consumer visits, and the methodology is really up front there. And they're not.
They've also got sharp knives.
Well, sharp knives, and I don't. Yeah, it's not just a case of that. I had a decent pork chop there once. It's more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Right, good. We got to wrap things up. We shall be back next week with more award chat. But have a good weekend, everybody. Goodbye.
Enjoy.